This lesson is all about presentation skills. And for some of you, this will be a review. My guess is for most of you, you have not delved into this area in the first preaching class. Why are presentation skills important? Well, you can craft the most beautiful message with all kinds of illustrations and all kinds of biblical references. But if you do not present it in a, shall we say, non-boring way, what good is it? I've heard some really nice sermons of context and then had a struggle to keep my eyes open and keep awake during the actual presentation. So we'll hit some of the basics, and then I'll add on some other things, and then ask you after this lesson is over to add your thoughts to it. Let me start with some of the basics. First thing is dress code. How do I dress? I would dress one level higher than what you expect the people to be dressed as, unless we're talking about going into tuxes and formal affair, or formal wear, I should say, because people expect you as the presenter to be a step above them. I know that sounds a little crazy. Now, this is easy for guys. You can go in even with a full-blown suit, and you can take the tie, and you can take the vest off if you're wearing one. You can take the jacket off, and you could pare down from a high formal level to a more contemporary, a more informal level. It's easier for guys. For you ladies, very tough thing, unless you're carrying several outfits with you. Whichever church you're going to be preaching at, I highly suggest you ask the pastor, what is the dress code? And then when he says informal, go somewhere between informal and formal just a little bit. If he's told it's jackets and ties and whatnot, then you want to wear, we would call it the professional attire. You certainly don't want to go in with jeans into a high traditional church that's expecting suits. And in the same way, wearing shorts, even though it's in the summer, may not be good for a traditional worship. But if you're doing a youth worship and you're just giving a message, it would work just fine. So you want to think about that. For the ladies, my wife went to local pastor school about 10 years ago, and they were directed that the women should wear some kind of robe so that they don't show off their beautiful figures. You don't want to be distracting in your dress code. That also means for guys, wearing large silver buckles that reflect light is going to distract from what you're trying to do. So I highly encourage. Doesn't mean you can't wear a silver buckle, but don't make it one of these gigantic cowboy ones. Make it a much smaller one. Try to stay away from that if possible. Colors are important, especially when you're going into places that you've never been at. They really don't know you. Brown is considered a boring color, so you want to stay away from brown, at least very dark browns, until you know the people. And once they know you're not boring, you could get away with some brown. Not all brown. You want to mix it up a little bit. Usually you want to find out what the power color tie is for this time period. All you have to do is look at the news and watch the members of Congress, President, Speaker of the House, Majority Leader in the Senate, and see what color ties they're wearing. Sometimes they were yellow tie, sometimes they're blue tie. Whatever the power tie is, I would honestly stay away from that color. You just don't want to give off that impression that you're Jesus in front of them by overpowering them with it. You want to share with them the message. You want to show them that you're going to be changed by the message you're about to preach as much as they'll be. You want to fit in as a peer, not being superior or not. Now, hand motions, it's a little tough here. Let me see if I can move back a little bit. You can see my beautiful chest shirt. Hand motions are very good because you watch hands. If you're going to stand and never move your hands, never turn your body, never turn your head, you will fall. The people will fall asleep. You will be boring. Movement of hands is a good thing. It also can be bad. You don't want to be doing so much that it's. So you have to figure out what the best is there. I think that if you can get yourself videotaped delivering a sermon, you will find how much hand motion you actually do. When your hands are idle, what do you do with them? A lot of people like to stick their hands in their pockets. Very, very bad idea. Because if there's change in your pocket or keys in your pocket, you'll start playing with those items. 20 years ago, when I was running this type of class, we called it pocket pool. Don't want to do that. Don't put your hands in your jacket coats. What you want to do is keep your hands, and here's the best way to do it. You go down where your belly button is and draw a triangle down to your waist, and when your hands are not in motion, that's a good place to keep them. It's above your belt. It's on your stomach area, your belly button area. Perfect place to keep it. Move them when you need to. Have them come back to home base, I used to call it. Podium usage is kind of intriguing. Personally, I don't use podiums. I move around, and I'll explain how you can get to that point. The problem with a podium is it creates a barrier between you and the congregation. If you come to, for example, an annual conference, you will see that the podiums are pure plastic or some kind of plexiglass. They're see-through, because if I can see through the podium and see you, then you're not away from me. There's no boundary between us. There's no blockage between us. I can see you. You're part of the group. What happens with podiums a lot of times that I've seen, especially in these small churches, they have the big honking wood things, the wood anchors, if you will, is you'll see people get in front, and here's where the hand motion comes. They take their hands, and it's going to be hard to show you this in such a small video, but they grip. And it's almost like they're putting their fingers through the wood. That's a sign of nervousness. If you're up there showing signs of nervousness and unsteadiness and unsureness, the persons listening to you are going to fade out on you quickly, because they're going to start saying in their head, this guy, this girl, does not know their material well. Laying your hand on a podium, fine. Not the whole time, fine. Gripping it, like for dear life, that's bad. Podiums are good to use. When I use podiums, if I have to and I can't move around, I want to have notes on the podium. What I've learned is a laptop computer is beautiful, if you can work it, because you can sit it on the podium and you can tilt the screen so that you don't have to look down at the notes. You've all seen people like that. I saw a sermon on video because I was visiting a very large church, and the pastor was bald. And this is what he did the whole time. Now you can see I got a little baldness too, but the whole time. And all I saw was his shiny head. No offense, I'm sorry to those of you who are bald. I don't mean to offend anyone, but when that happens, even if you do have hair and you're bending down like this because you're reading off that podium, and he pretty much read that transcript, he's not paying attention to me. He's not conversing with me. He's conversing with his piece of paper. And frankly, I was ready to stand up and say, can you just give me the document? I'll read it myself. If you use a laptop on a podium, you could situate that laptop so it looks like you're looking out at the audience when indeed you're actually reading the transcript. More about that later if you're going to do that. Language is very intriguing. Language has changed over the years. I got in trouble at a church because I used the word crap. And I actually had a couple say they could not come listen to my messages because I used this horrible word. You know, you have to know your setting. Obviously, swear words, cuss words, wouldn't use those. That's that part. Language also means that you're not up there to show the people how smart you are by using fancy theological words, because they don't know them. I do use language like justification and sanctification because I believe that the congregation needs to know those words, but I will translate those words every time. Every time. I had a gal on staff who came from Yale Divinity, and I had her recorded, I should say, and I listened to the sermon, and she was doing part-time work. She was a lawyer, also an ordained minister, and I had to say to her, you're using a lot of terms these people don't know. You've got to explain what the terms are. And she started to do that, and the people got much more responsive. Yeah, I want to hear the fancy term, the Latin term, what we call the SAT word, but you got to explain it to them. And you have to do it every time. Don't expect them to remember because you said it 3 weeks ago that they're going to remember it. It doesn't work that way. Especially if you're being a lay servant and you're going into a church like once in a while. Assume they don't know the fancy language. All right. Emotions is very important and very useful because with emotions you're going to have reflections in your voice where you get really happy and then you can get really sad. You can use it as a tool to grab people's attention. Be careful how you do it. You don't want to put a whole lot of rage out there, but sometimes a little rage is good. Sometimes I like to say to the congregation, 70% of people in the United States, this is an example, 70% of the people in the United States say they're Christians by the U.S. Census. Well, where are they? Why are they not voting for Christian candidates? Why are they not in uproar when the courts take the Ten Commandments out? They kick the Ten Commandments out of the court. Where are they? So you see what I'm doing here. I could get emotional in that way to try to drag them in, to try to touch their hearts. But you do have to be careful with emotions. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to start yelling at people. You don't want to make people feel bad. You want them excited. Remember that a sermon purpose is to change thinking or change the way people are doing things. And that's where emotions could be very, very helpful. And that ties into your voice. Raising your voice, lowering your voice. Have you ever sat through a sermon that was monotone? Wow, talk about boring. I'm out of here. I once heard a parishioner sing monotone, and I'm a lousy singer, but at least I'm not monotone. Inflections are good. Having you hang on words every once in a while with poetic pauses is good. It's legend, wait for it, dairy. I think you get the point. Reading transcripts. Nothing wrong with reading transcripts. I read transcripts when I first got started. If you're not preaching almost every week and you have been doing it for 15 years or 16 years now that I've been doing this, you're going to need a transcript. You need the transcript to keep you on target. We can also use outlines, but what I'm going to talk about in reading transcripts with presentation skill is the more important. We'll deal with transcripts and outlines later. If you're going to read your transcript, and you need to do that, which is fine, this is what I'm recommending you do. Get dictation software. I use Dragon Dictation 13, I think the version is. Fabulous piece of software. Do your sermon development and then dictate your sermon by looking at your notes of what you want to say to these people. Dictate it. Because oral communication is far different than written communication. If you go back and listen to this video, you will see all the, see, I already said it, you will hear all the grammatical mistakes I've been making. Because we make grammatical mistakes in oral communication. If you dictate your transcript, you're going to have to fix it a little bit because even Dragon software is not 100% perfect. And you leave the extra that's and thises in there, which would not be in the written communication, but is in the oral. Then if you're reading the transcript, it'll be harder for the people to figure out that's what you're doing. Because you'll be making the oral communication mistakes along the way. Trust me, it works beautifully. I've done that for years also. You don't want your grammar to be perfect. That tells people, wow, that person's reading it. And if you get really good at the transcript thing, you learn how to ad-lib into the transcript. So when I'm using a transcript, very rarely, and I was way back when, it was very hard, even for my wife, to be able to tell whether I was on the transcript or I was ad-libbing. It just flowed. Because I used the dictation software to create the transcript, now I had something in oral communications. And that works the absolute best. Now this lesson is just the basics and the beginnings. Let me show you one other thing that I'm highly recommending, and that's this book. It's called Presentation Skills 201, How to Take It to the Next Level as a Confident, Engaging Presenter. It also comes in Kindle, which is good because, frankly, I get tired of carrying thousands of books with me, so I've been buying as much as possible in Kindle. The 6-inch Kindle is really easy to carry. It's worth it. It's a great reference book. There are others. This is one of the newer ones. I think you'll find it quite useful. Part of what's going to happen is you need experience. You need experience being up in front of people. You know, you're presenting the gospel of Jesus. Even if you're in the Old Testament, okay, let's use an encompassing word. You are presenting the Word of God. Now, if that doesn't scare you, then maybe you shouldn't be doing this. Every Sunday, I get slightly nervous. We'll talk about nervous energy. I will get slightly nervous, a little butterfly-ish, when the worship starts and I know that I'm going to get up there and say something about God. I want it right. I want it so people understand it. These things are quite important. Knowing how to present is a key.